So I'm going to record these from here because I just don't see it anywhere else and it needs to be said. So the enemy isn't society, it's not a group, it's not a political party, it's not an income bracket, it's not or a relation, it's none of that. It's first, it's ignorance. And it's not just a lack of awareness or a lack of knowledge or a lack of education. It's that the system itself, anyone, it's just not built in any way to help anyone. Some people have an obvious advantage, and then other people don't. So if you're elite rich and you're super wealthy and your parents had millions of dollars, you're probably going to have an easier life. You might not. You might have millionaire parents that are really mean to you or teach you a poor set of morality that translates into a series of bad events in your life and a lack of emotional fulfillment. Right? There are different things to measure value in life on. And, I think there's this huge disparity between basic necessities and relative comfort. And for whatever reason, we've learned to demonize or not value that equality. We've learned to demonize people that don't have like a certain, there must be something wrong with them, or they're bad, or they're less, or they're worse. They're in a third world country, they're poor, they're from a bad, whatever. They made bad decisions, they chose that. No, sometimes just life goes that way. Some people. In some countries, there really aren't options, and there are structures in power. There are governments in place. There are really callous and uncaring corporations and people that make decisions that I wholeheartedly disagree with and hope find, and we want to say more humanity, but those were humans. And we don't like to own it that humans did bad things and we're bad. That we're not bad, but we're humans too. These humans did these bad things, and we don't want to feel bad because we're also human like them. We say people that did terrible things that hurt lots of people were monsters. And we don't like to admit that that was a person that did that. And so I think it's natural that people want to create these groups to separate themselves from what they see as being not understandable or wrong or bad. And because life is hard for everyone, it's less hard for some people. And some of those people care and some of them don't. You're going to find people in all walks of life that care and that don't. And inherently there is this selfishness and selflessness. And those are just kind of what all of the everything and all the cultures and most of the religious teachings I've encountered and most of the people I've met and most of just the morality and the ethics of it all, it's to do good for other people, to be selfless, and or to do good for nature, to do something, to put something above or beyond yourself, to invest yourself in something beyond what is you and what is personal, and then the selfish, and to do for yourself, to take advantage of other people, or to do you very utilitarian or very very balanced, just like kind of do no harm, but it's okay to for yourself, and to be very selfish. And some people are like that, and there's people that are like that in some aspects of life, and they're the other way in different aspects of their life. Somebody can be very selfish in love and very giving to charity, or vice versa. And someone can be very selfless all the time in many ways, or very selfish all the time in many ways. Those are different aspects of people. But I think inherently in just many of the texts and in many of the people I've spoken to over the years, that's really kind of what it's boiled down to, is that give and take, selflessness versus selfishness. It's not even dominance and submission. It's not masochism or sadism. It's different than that. It's a different thing. Those can be combined and intertwined with those things. It's not even if dominance and submissiveness are not necessarily sexual. Neither is sadism and masochism. Those are generally considered a perversion when applied to sex. Many people are, social masochists. So the point is that there's this inherent lack of understanding. This lack of, it's not any particular political worldview. It's not Republican or Democrat. It's not the rich giant corporations. It's not the union. It's not even communism at this point, or socialism, or capitalism, or democracy, or republicanism, because so many of these terms are so heavily diluted now. I am no fan of communism. I think it is one of the most lack of respect for the individual governmental systems ever devised, and I think it's atrocious in that respect. But lots of other people like it. I disagree with it as a fundamental system. But I was brought up to. Is there a notion that maybe somewhere in there the state can and should own certain things? I don't really want to trust my roads to private companies and have to pay them to get around. I don't think I'd like that. I don't think I'd like to have. I don't think I'd like if all the roads were toll roads everywhere. That doesn't sound useful. So you have these governments, you have these massive government systems that exist with millions and billions of people within them that they have to somehow work for, serve, shepherd, guide, provide services to, make sure there's roads, interact with trade. Governments exist for a reason in the 21st century, and some of them are more or less selfless or selfish than others. And this is kind of how we judge and rule morality. And I don't think you can be completely selfless, because when someone is, that becomes a martyr. We consider a person a dupe, someone easily taken advantage of. We don't like completely selfish people. In fact, we nailed one of them to some boards and stabbed him in the side and mocked him. That was the fate. I've always considered that one of the greatest lessons of the Bible is you dare not be a martyr. We'll kill you. That's the punishment for being a martyr. I've always found that sad, and that so many people were a symbol of this man's death. I've always liked the fish. He was very generous. Again, a very selfless act. There has to be a balance. There must be a balance to the self. There must be a balance to all things. You can't give any and all things away. If you sit idly in the forest, no matter how peaceful you are, if the tiger is hungry, it's going to eat you. So there must be a balance between selfishness and selflessness. You must have a certain, it doesn't have to be a perfect even balance. It can be a little one-sided. You should maybe be a little more giving than you are selfish. You should make sure you've got your needs taken care of, and then do what you can for everyone else. If you're not doing that, then what's the point of a society? Isn't it better if everyone's trying to get all they can for themselves? Isn't it better to stay away from as many of them as possible? So then how do you create equity? Equity is a thing I think that is important. It's not just equality, it's equity. It's that people have some kind of level playing field, some kind of floor under them, some kind of baseline. And I think that's crucial. I think that has to be a global crucial. It doesn't matter how far away someone is, that's a person. You either value human life or you don't. Do you value human life? Do you want to see less people suffer? Are you a sadist? Do you enjoy knowing people suffer in this world? Well, that's an aberration and a perversion, according to most people. You should probably see someone about that. That's not very selfless. So it's okay to try and get the things you need to have food and water and shelter and heat. To get those things. Conversations I had with my father years ago, he swore that access to electricity and communication were crucial. There was just no equality in the 20th century without it, 21st century without access to not only electricity but to at least news and weather and some kind of communication, a phone. It was just those were the bare necessities of life. I would add internet access to that now. It's just too hard to pay your bills without it. It is simply just too difficult to get a hold of people. And when you do, 9 times out of 10, the person on the phone tells you to go to their website and do it. That's just how things are done. So I think it's okay to provide people with a phone. I think I think the phone and the ID are going to combine. Maybe at some point your ID is going to be on your phone. I don't see why they're not. You've got the RFID in your phone, the RFID in your cards are just going to start opening things or you tie into your personal area network. I don't necessarily think a government issued ID card will vanish, but I think that some kind of equivalent, like you can put your insurance on your phone now, right? Because your ID is in a system, I think all they really need is your number. They just want you to have it for because it's traditional. They haven't changed it yet. That you have to have it. The only reason anybody has to have any kind of driver's license or ID in this day and age is because we haven't changed the laws. Any and all countries are subject to the following: the laws are only there until they're changed. That's it. So, what you've got to do is you've got to look at how to get, and there's this notion that some people should have more than others, and I don't know if I buy into that. I don't know if everybody needs to have exactly the same thing. That's kind of a notion within communism that everybody gets like about the same or close to the same. And I just don't know if that works either. But I don't really get why like I get why maybe some people work harder, they put in more hours a day, or they do a more dangerous job, or they do a more stressful job, or they do a job that's harder. I get that. And maybe they should be compensated for doing those harder jobs. But the notion that some people somewhere, because they're not doing what somebody else thinks they should be, because they're not contributing to whatever, that they don't get food or water or a bathroom or a place to stay. Like, isn't that better that they had like a place to stay? than running around everywhere. And then, like, now you've got I think one of the biggest problems that we've ever faced is that because the laws can change, you have this drive from fear. Everybody's a little bit afraid there won't be enough. We're taught that there's great scarcity and that scarcity drives value, and that there's not enough. We throw away enough food to feed the world. We throw away enough food to feed the world. There is no good reason why anybody on this planet right now is hungry. You know, in a couple hundred years, when we really do start to hit the limits of what we can do, and gosh, maybe a few hundred years after that, when we've really tapped out the oceans, and maybe a few hundred years after that, when there's just no space left and the orbital greenhouses that we build really can't do it. The only reason there's food not going to everyone is because, really, we waste enough to feed the world. So I just see a lot of people that talk about being good and loaves and fishes and being like their holy book, or living this sacred way. And I see a lot of hypocrites that don't even think about like what to do. And that's because people are afraid. They're taught there's scarcity. They're taught that there's a boogeyman. And part of the reason for this is because someone somewhere was afraid they weren't going to have enough. It really always comes back to that fear. Fear of not having enough, fear of not being safe. And that's a really sad thing, to be ruled by fear. Most people are without realizing it. It takes a ton of self-evaluation, of self-examination, of insight, of going through to really see where these things are. What are you really afraid of? Why are you scared? Why do you want these things? Why are these things important? Who's really going to come take it from you? The truth is, the vast majority of people aren't going to come near you to take any of your stuff as long as you leave them alone. A few people might. There's a few people in the world that might. And we do what we can to try and stop that. But somewhere along the way, in trying to stop those few people that might, or some of the basic bickerings of human nature, in an attempt to try and force a way of life on people, or to force a morality on people instead of trying to encourage it, because of a fear of loss of, I don't know, cultural identity or global position, personal power, whatever. The system got manipulated somewhere along the way by some people. It clearly did. Doesn't matter who or when. I mean, we can go back to Tammany Hall. And everybody's afraid to change it. Nobody has the courage anywhere to say, you know what, enough is enough. We actually do have the resources. Let's just have freedom and equality and individualism and expression, and quit trying to hoard things for the rich so the rich have very, very much and the poor don't and the ignorant don't, and we have more education and more equality, and people get enough to eat, enough houses to live in, and they can do things like pursue art, and if they want to go work hard, they can go work hard, and if they don't, then they don't have to, because quite honestly, the system is so self-supporting at this point. We can bail out multi-billion-dollar automakers that fly around in private jets. We can bail out our banks and give them millions and billions of dollars, and nothing really changes. I think gas went up a little bit for a while. That's how self-supporting and powerful the system is. That's how much an illusion all of this is, all of this scarcity is. Amazon pays less taxes than you do. If you pay any taxes at all, Amazon pays less taxes. That's how self-supporting and self-running the system is. And so trying to change that, it's not Amazon, it's not Jeff Bezos, it's not George Soros, it's not Brexit, it's not Donald Trump, it's that there is this giant system, and somewhere along the way it got manipulated, and built into the system now is this notion that we have to keep manipulating it. And that we have to have this classism, and that some people deserve more than others. Okay, maybe some people should be rewarded for doing hard work. I don't want to take that away from anybody that feels that way. Sure, maybe you should get a little extra. You know, it's like in most countries, a doctor is just enough prestige on its own. You don't really make a lot of money for being like a country physician. You don't make like $50,000 a year. You make like $60,000 a year or $70,000. You don't have the same student loans, but like, you know, you just make a modest wage. You make a good living, it's comfortable. But you're not rich. I think like more people are doctors in those countries because they want to heal people, you know. So we lost some of that. We lost some of our just our collective morality, some of our collective selflessness. And this is like every country in the world. It's like everywhere is scrambling to do this. There's like that one guy from Uruguay. I think it's Uruguay or Paraguay. I think it's Uruguay. That guy lives in a little house. It's an old guy. Wears beat up shoes, you know. Tries to set an example. There's people like that out there. But there's honestly, it can change. It's going to take time. More and more people are going to have to let it. You've got everybody distracted and fighting for a different cause. Everybody's distracted and fighting for a different cause, and they all think theirs is real important. And there's a huge misdirection show going on, and people are fighting that now. And so the point is, it can change. There's enough. The idea of the scarcity is a little bit of a lie. It's quite a bit of a lie, especially now. And it kind of got built in early on because, well, somebody was scared and they had some fear they weren't going to have enough because they didn't have the same technology back then. There were some competing ideas about ways of life. People didn't want to lose their identity. And so they fought real hard to make sure some systems were in place that were really entrenched to do that. And those systems just got continually manipulated by people seeing that it was there. And again, thinking, well, hey, you know, maybe why not me? Why not my cause? Why not me? You know, I want enough too. There's a way to get this. And right? That's just kind of gone on and on for a while. You know, we call that government corruption. And there's this. It's not going to get rid of it by getting a rich guy in office. Sorry. You're not going to get rid of it with it. You know, you'd have to evacuate all of Congress and this. I'll tell you what, let's take it the next presidential election. Actually, I don't think we should maybe do it at this next election. Let's wait till after this guy's out. He's such an incumbent with so much support. It's unlikely we'd get any real positive change. At the next one after this one, maybe. Right? Heck, we do this one. I'll have some cards. We'll do this next one. Whatever. We take the president and all of the senators and all of the Supreme Court and all of the House of Representatives. And since they keep shutting down the government for a couple of weeks anyway, we just hold special elections and re-elect all of them. And anybody who's in office now isn't allowed to stay. How about that? That's actually, maybe an option. We could lawfully do that. Cultural, national, what do you call it? There's a word for this. They do Poll. There's a real fancy word for it. It escapes me. So they put it on the ballot. I don't think they will. I don't know if that's the best idea, but hey, it's a thought. You want some real change in the country? Everybody that's in office now at the highest levels of government is out. We put in all brand new people. Everybody has to be put in new. That would shake things up. And it'd be like a really, non-impactful, comfortable, lawful, constitutional way to do things. I don't know if that would be any good. It'd definitely be a thing to do. What it's going to take is more and more people realizing that they got to help each other. That's all there's to it. You just got to help each other. You got to keep helping each other. And I think people don't get that. And it's got to happen at the personal level. It's got to happen at the state level. It's got to happen at the municipal level. It's got to happen at the federal level. It's got to happen at the global level. And then maybe when the whole planet is actually helping each other, gosh, maybe we might, if there's something out there. If there's something out there waiting, then maybe it might try to help us. You want God to come back? Make this place a garden instead of a war zone.